today's episode of Meat and Fire, we have not the king of barbecue, but a close second. We got a nice, fatty, delicious pork belly. Okay, so first steps always with all things barbecue is to get it seasoned right, to get it trimmed right, to get everything nice and aerodynamic so that it's going to cook the way it's supposed to in the pit. We don't get any burn spots. We get that nice bark that we like, nice deep flavor. First thing you see here is we've got the pork belly's pretty big, and that's going to make for too long of slices later after we get done cooking. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this bad boy and we're just going to split it in half. So when you're looking at the pork belly here, once we get it cut here in the middle, the first thing that you see is this basically is bacon. Pork belly is, if you cured it and left it alone for a little while, you'd have bacon. So that's why this is such a delicious cut of meat. Now when we cut it in half here, if you see on these edges right here in the middle, we have these corner pieces. When you're doing offset smoking, you don't like corners because it leads to getting burnt pieces. So we're just going to round those out real quick right here on the edges. Got a little catch bowl here for my drippings. If you can see, like I have this little fatty corner here. We don't want that to burn up in the cook, so we're gonna get it out of here. We are outdoors in Colorado, so we're fighting the bugs a bit. But if any of you do barbecue at home, you know that's part of the process when you're doing it for real. So, and now we'll go put some flavor on it. So, Kinder's hickory brown sugar seasoning. It's got a few other things like some garlic and stuff like that, but we're going to lay that down as our primary flavor today, and we're going to go right on top of the fat side here. So first things first, we're going to lay this down real heavy. So this is, again, you can use whatever rub you want to. Pork is pretty friendly with lots of different stuff. Lots of different people preach by all kinds of different pork rubs. I went with a hickory brown sugar today because I'm using hickory wood. So I think it's going to complement the smoke well. It's got granulated garlic. It's got some black pepper. It's got some other things that are going to lend to us getting a real good season. I like to start up high so that you season real even. Notice I don't, rub the seasoning in here. I'm just patting it down. I chose to go no binder this time just because these are pretty moist right out of the pack. Usually I would have used a mustard binder. Now, this here is a combination. If you can see, there's some pepper and salt, and then I've added some more coarse pepper, and then I've added some Lowry's garlic salt. So this is what's going to make my bark. I'm going to go ahead and shift it around in there, get it all nice and mixed. But important element when you're doing offset barbecue, that crispiness, that barkiness that everybody likes. If you don't have pepper, you're not going to get it. And so we're going to come through and we're going to do a second layer with this salt and pepper up top. And this is what's going to give us that crispy, barky layer on top of the fat and around the edges here over this. It's going to be kind of a longer smoke. All right. So I run fire on an Old Country Pecos. Comes with this fire plate that goes in here in the bottom. You have the choice whether you want to build a fire just in the bottom of your firebox or if you want to use the grate. I use the grate because I tend to rake out my charcoal ash and my wood ash over the duration of the cook to keep good airflow, to keep burning clean fire the whole time. I'm going to break an old school rule of barbecue, and I'm starting my cold bed with match light. I don't care. Yell at me in the comments. So I got some comments on my brisket video in relation to fire management. Scott, you asked about what happens, about 6 hours deep into your cook, and how do you manage your fire? You start eating through your wood splints a lot faster. So one thing that I was talking about is underneath here, I have my plate that my coals are sitting on top of. And when you see the guys in the bigger barbecue joints, they tend to use a shovel and get the excess coals out of their firebox over the course of the cook. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this. You can get one of these charcoal rakes online for like 15, 20 bucks. Mine's pretty cheap and weak, but it does its job. And it goes in right underneath here. And so later in the cook, when I have these extra coals and stuff that are creating excess heat or hurting my airflow, I can rake them out into here. And then as long as I keep a steady coal bed, and I'll show that later in the video, but as long as I have the coal bed steady, then my wood's not, I'm not going to just eat right through my wood. So we'll go through that here in a bit. So basically you've got the fire sits in the firebox on this side. And when I close this down, this stack is pulling the heat through the throat into the main cook chamber. And then that heat travels through, goes over the top of the meat. That's why my meat's going to sit fat side up. And then that heat's going to travel over the top. It's going to cook that, bring all the seasoning, flavor, and everything down. So if you can see here now, the coals are starting to burn white. So we got most of that ugly smoke that I don't really want in my smoker on my food off of there. Now I'm going to come over here to my wood source. Going to get a few pieces and we're going to build what's called a bundle fire. So I'm going to come over here, and on one side of this fire, I'm going to kind of push it in and get up close with a piece of wood there. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then I'm going to build about 3 pieces right here. These pieces are a little smaller, so I might do 4, nice and tight to the coals. And what I'm trying to build is a nice smoky fire. We're actually going to let that get caught. Once that catches, we're going to close this down, and this is going to give us a nice significant coal bed to start the cook off. So everything from here will be all wood up until the end of the cook. So I'll show you how we go as we go. So now that we have our nice tight bundle fire started and we have our wood starting to catch, we're going to go ahead and bring this lid down. We're going to bring this lid down, and we're going to start letting the smoke roll. I'm going to take my stack on this side here, and I'm going to close it down to around 75%. And now I'm just letting my meat finish, let the salt activate, let the seasoning sit in while I bring the pit up to the temp that I want it to be at. And then I'll control it from here. Look at that nice clean smoke right there. So when you get that thick, hearty, like, that's that smoke that makes that bitter taste. So you want your smoke like this or even cleaner. Now in the beginning, when these first go on, I'll want to have my smoke about like this. The main key in doing this type of barbecue is fire management. Temperature pins are at the grate level. So they're actually telling me, like, even though this tells me what the heat is up here where the thermostat's at, heat rises. But the meat's going to be sitting down here. And so the pins being at grate level actually tell me where's the temperature going to be at where I'm putting the meat. All right, so we've got our nice tight bundle fire going. We've got clean smoke. We're hanging out right now. The pit at grate level says about 300. This is going to go between 275 and 300. I have already closed down my stack to about 20% open only. We had it about 50% open to get it up to temp. It's time to get the meat on. We're going to put them side by side here. If you've watched my videos before, as you know, we're running an Old Country Pecos. So that's why I have a heat pin here to know where my hot spot, about where I'm getting. I'm about 6-7 inches away from my hot spot here. Heavier part of the fat facing the firebox. We might turn these around later, but this is going to get closed down and we won't look at these bad boys for about 2 hours. All right, so in terms of fire management on our cook, one of the things that we're watching for is I've started to have a heat drop of about 20-ish degrees. Started to drop down. So I have some splints that are just sitting here on top of the firebox, getting hot, ready to catch on fire. So if we look in here, let me grab my fire tongs. If you don't keep a pair of fire tongs somewhere near your setup, keep a pair of fire tongs. Don't hurt yourself. But so I'm going to go in here. I'm going to kind of tend this a little bit. And you see how I still got some wood burning, but I now have a coal bed of that initial bundle fire that I put in here. And this is what's the main source of my heat. at this point. But in order to get smoke, I need fire. Take a decent sized splint. The splint size is going to vary based on the size of your firebox. I'm running an Old Country Pecos, so I got about 12, 13-inch splints. These I'm doing a little bit bigger because I want longer burns out of them. Let me put it in here, set it in right here on top of my coals. At this point, I should have enough heat, and this has been sitting on top of the box long enough, maybe about 30, 45 seconds, and we're going to get fire again. So at this point, we've kind of had our coal bed die down a little bit. I've got one splint that's kind of burning, and we've got a big temperature drop, and this is where a lot of folks start to panic. At this point, this is where I kind of smash everything down. I get all my coals down to where my coal bed's at, and then I'm just going to get another splint in here and start reestablishing a coal bed with the pieces that I have in here. And then I'll just control the heat with the intake and the stack. Like straight up, just watching people eat when you make something delicious, like watching the smiles on people's faces when they bite into something and their face light up. I have people that come over because I'll smoke pork tenderloin. They don't like pork loin. They say it's always too dry or whatever. They eat it. I had a girl one time, I had a barbecue. I had all the pork loin sliced up in there, and I had pork loin, I had brisket. It was Father's Day. And she said to me later, she said, that chicken show was good. I said, I didn't make no chicken. I said, that was pork. She said, I don't eat pork. The other homie was like, I guess you do, and you loved it.
That's funny as
So
fuck.
people, you know, like if you make stuff right, like people be eating food they don't even think they like. We are about 2 hours in, and this is the first time we're taking a look at it. We are getting that perfect mahogany color coming on here. We can see just on top, we're getting a little flakiness, a little dryness. I'm not even going to check temp yet because we're only about 2 hours in, but I am going to go ahead and hit it with a little spritz. 1 part apple cider vinegar, 3 parts water, just to keep some moisture in there, keep it running. And then we're going to close it back down. We're going to let it ride and keep letting the smoke do its job. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I did some research. I watched some YouTube videos this morning before I went to work. I watched some of my favorite YouTubers and shit. Like, I don't do anything without trying to do it well, and I don't ever assume that I know everything. So, like, I watched a video by Meat Church. I watched a video by Steve Gowan Barbecue. I watched a video by Mad Sciences Barbecue. I watched a video by Bar A Barbecue from Texas. Like, I watched a whole bunch of different ones to get different ideas for how I wanted to cook it. And I was like, okay, now that I've seen this done so many times by all these different channels, like I've got some ideas, you know. But I'd be learning from other barbecue YouTubers too, man. So we are checking in. We're officially at the 3-hour mark. We just want to see where we're riding temp-wise. Oh my God, that is tender. We're right at about 170 in the front. Let's see this other one. Oof, real tender here. Let's see what it finished figuring itself out here. 177. Keep some moisture in the cook here. Straight in places, looks like you got a little more heat in the back, and this little fattier piece is cooking a little slower, so we're gonna let it go. Close it back down and keep running heat. Let it ride.
Look at the fire.
You like that?
So at this point, we're pretty deep into our cook. So we're going to do a couple of things to kind of make sure we keep our fire right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull these coals to the end. What I want is everything to get oxygen to be able to breathe. I'm going to take my coal rake And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make space for all of this to be able to breathe. So all I'm doing is reaching underneath here, pulling these additional ashes out that are getting in the way of breath. There's some extra coals kind of that are hanging out underneath there too. Some of that I've, gotten the question about stuff burning up too fast. It could be due to lack of oxygen. So when a splint finally catches, it's not, by the time it catches, it's burning super fast because it takes so long for it to catch because there's no air for it to be able to catch and do what it's supposed to. So I'm going to pull this out to the end here. I'm going to kind of recompose my coal bed, which is now completely comprised of wood that I've burnt at this point. I'm trying to maintain about 275, 300. So I'm probably going to go back in with 2 splints. Probably just one based on the size of the splint. And then let that one catch. You see, because my coal bed's so good and I've had these splints pre-warming on here and I've just reinvigorated the ability to get oxygen to the fire. That caught right away. That didn't even take 20, 30 seconds. So we are at 4.5 hours into our cook. You can see the sun's gone down. This is not an activity for the week. It takes a while. So we're just gonna check our temp. We were at 170 last time. We're gonna come right in the end here. Your boy needs a better pen, but we'll get there. So here, I'm not sure what happened with our audio. I'm coming out to check on the meat here, checking a final temperature after around like a 6-hour cook. We're right about where we want to be. We're at that 195-ish mark. We want to be between 195 and 200 normally. Again, the goal is we want the fat fully rendered. We want it to slice, and be just like cotton candy. We want that delicious flavor. As you can see, the bark's rendered really good. The meat's looking pretty. Everything's adhered. Everything's stuck. So these are ready to pull at this point. We've been resting about 20 minutes just to give it time to kind of reabsorb its juices here and see how everything came together. We got a nice intact bark. So, moment of truth. I'll find out if all the work was worthwhile. We've got, that's what we're looking for. Ooh, that smoke ring. Basically what you got here is like bacon. It also pulls right apart. And moment of truth. Oh my god. It melts in your mouth. I'm come here. Bite it.
I get fresh off them. Good.
How is it?
Good.
Yeah?
That tastes like the
Bro, that melts in your mouth. Fucking hey, that's good, man. Go on. I've never had meat that melts in your mouth like that. Yeah. If you made it this far, I do appreciate you sticking around. First pork belly was a success. It's absolutely melts in your mouth, amazing. Hopefully you took something away that can help you do the same thing at home. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, share, comment, tell me what you'd like to do next. If you have any questions, if you have any suggestions for me, something you'd like me to do in another cook, let me know. Make sure you click the notification bell so that you get notified whenever I upload a video. Yeah, catch you guys next time.